Hello and welcome to tonight's live stream. Welcome to the Twins Ticket. And as you can see here, we are going to be following some breaking news that the Twins are in pursuit of Chris Paddack, starting pitcher of the San Diego Padres. And Taylor Rogers has been rumored to be in the mix. What's up? This is Tom Froming. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And a bunch of fellow Twins fans that'll be funneling in as well as we're live here. Go ahead and say hello in the comments. I've got the chat up here, so those will pop up as you come on through. There's a bit of a delay, but not too bad. So, had some other things to talk about tonight, but this Chris Paddack news is definitely going to dominate the conversation. The Twins clearly in need of additional pitching, even with, the Chris Archer signing, sort of filling out their five-man rotation. We know in this day and age, it's not just five guys that you're going to count on in a rotation. You have quite a few starting pitchers throughout the course of a season that you're going to end up relying upon. So, not only could they use just an upgrade, they could use some more depth as well. So, makes a whole lot of sense for the Twins to be pursuing pitching still. And Chris Paddack's a guy who has 3 years of team control. So he's sort of a fix for now and hopefully potentially a guy who can really help this rotation for multiple seasons. Shout out to everybody. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to try to keep up with the chat here. I have a feeling it might be a little bit quicker than usual. Somebody asked about Will Myers. I mean, Will Myers, really, the Twins are only going to be interested in him for the most part to help alleviate some of the cost of the trade. Like adding Will Myers, he has negative trade value. So if you add Will Myers into this trade on San Diego's end, there will be less that you have to give up, I think. We'll kind of dig into the specifics in just a moment here. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm out of Medai 1997. No problem. Yeah, these are kind of come in when you can, and if you can't, that's all good too. Frankie Montas, the Twins, they were in on him shortly. They've been in on him all off season, but I think the asking price is probably just a bit higher than they feel comfortable with. He is much better than Chris Paddack, Frankie Montas. Let's not kind of get that out of the way first here. So, there's a scenario in which you could think, the Twins just aren't coming to a price that the A's find agreeable. Maybe the A's think that they can just hold on to him until the deadline and teams will be more desperate then. It's hard to say what Oakland's motivations are. If I was the Twins, I would be pushing extremely hard for Frankie Montas. But kind of looking on the outside, looking in, it's hard to say, who's available and how much it would take to get someone. But let's talk about Paddack in general for a moment and then get into some of the kind of trade info. I've got some information to share here. One moment. I promise I've done this before. This is why we did so many off-season live shows during the lockout, so I'd be good at this, but still not butter smooth. But so thanks for hanging in there. All right, but, Eno Saris is from The Athletic is like my go-to guy for pitching stuff. I love his analysis. And as this is sort of Eno's take here, basically that, he made some adjustments last year and there's potential that he could make some counter adjustments at this point to really click. And then that seems to be quite a bit of the analysis that Paddack, who was really great in his rookie season in 2019, has kind of tailed off a bit the last couple of years, but the stuff is still there. And we'll take a look at some things that definitely support that. Hopping over to Fangraphs here, I have over the last 2 seasons pulled up here and a minimum of 150 innings pitched. That's a sample of 104 pitchers, as you can see there. And I want to sort this out by strikeout to walk ratio. Typically, if you've got a nice strikeout to walk ratio, you're going to be a pretty good pitcher. Now, it's not always that's the case. But Chris Paddack is 16th in baseball in strikeout to walk ratio. Again, among this sample of 104 pitches. And this was from the last 2 seasons, so these are his bad seasons. where he's ranking very high in this metric, above Kenta Maeda, who's a very good, control guy who gets a lot of strikeouts. An 8.44 K per nine versus a 1.83 walks per nine. So a guy that really doesn't walk a whole lot of batters in Chris Paddack. Again, 16th there in that metric. I wanted to point that out just to sort of give you an idea of, his overall numbers don't look good from the past 2 seasons, but there's a lot of underlying stuff that looks good with him. Again, came into the league in 2019 and had a 3.33 ERA with a 0.98 whip. Excellent season for him as a rookie. And I've actually brought up Paddack a few times on these live streams as sort of a cautionary tale in regard to Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober in why you can't consider all progression to be linear. Just because guys start out great doesn't mean you can just say, well, they're young and they're only going to get better. Paddack's been a guy I've pointed to multiple times this offseason and saying, well, that's not always the case. Look at this guy. It didn't really work that way for him. Major league hitters are incredible. There is no substituting facing major league hitters. They will figure you out eventually, and you have to counter adjust. Paddack has tried to do that, and it hasn't really worked out. But again, some of his underlying numbers really tell you that there's some good stuff there. Speaking of that, he averages, about 95 miles per hour with this fastball. We're here at Baseball Savant now. Actually, I want to make this bigger. I'm realizing this is a little bit smaller than I want with the chat in here. Pardon me. All right. So again, his fastball averages 95 about. That's 75 percentile in fastball velocity. And of course, that factors in all pitchers. So for starting pitchers, that's really up there. And again, his walk rate in the 95th percentile, very good. See, everything else not looking good. You don't want to be in the blue. This isn't encouraging all this other stuff. Honestly, I haven't even looked at these, but let's look at the 2 previous years. 2020 looks a lot like 2021. And 2019, going back to that excellent rookie season, there you can see kind of these under the hood metrics really align with his overall performance. Very good in 2019, not as good in 2020 or 2021. But again, he's a guy that throws hard. What is the exact? I want the exact number on 94.8, excuse me, on the 4-seam fastball. So plenty of velo with Chris Paddack. And he's 26 years old. He's got 3 more years of team control. So definitely could be an interesting piece to target for the Twins. They need a starter, and they could use a long-term starter. That would certainly be nice for the Twins. Let me take a look at the chat here. Yeah, and Chipotle is Life 23 says, I really think Paddack would succeed with us. Pitching in front of that horrendous Padres defense didn't help him much. That's certainly something to keep in mind. And, the Twins having now Byron Buxton in center field and Carlos Correa at shortstop and, even Jorge Polanco as a second baseman. He's not a very good shortstop, but I think Polanco's a really good second baseman. Urshela is pretty damn good at third base. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, you gotta help me out in the chat too. If something actually goes down and becomes official, you gotta let me know, because I'm not gonna be able to keep up on this as good as I usually would be. But okay, we've talked about Paddack a bit now. I think where a lot of Twins fans are getting hung up and finding it difficult on this rumor right now is that Taylor Rogers is potentially going to be involved in this trade. I get it. I get the hesitancy at that point. He's the closer. He's a great relief pitcher. He's a guy who's, obviously we're expecting to contribute at the major league level. So it'd be difficult. It's a lot easier to give up prospects and not have that impact the major league roster than it would be to give up a guy like Rogers. I get that. However, that's the situation that potentially you're in dealing with San Diego. San Diego is not a rebuilding team. San Diego is a team that wants to be winning right now. So I don't know that you're going to be able to give them prospects and get a guy like Paddack. Now, Rogers, it would sting. It would sting a lot. I'm not going to lie. It would sting a lot to involve him in a trade right now, because you look at the bullpen and there's not really that obvious next guy in line. Jorge Alcala had an excellent second half last year. He was one of the best relievers in baseball in the second half last year. But that is just a half of a season. His velo's been a little bit down this spring, Alcala that is, but I don't think that's really any reason to get too concerned. But it's just sort of another thing to keep in mind in this whole equation. Of course, Yohan Duran has made the opening day roster and, could be a massive factor, but he hasn't even made his major league debut yet. So you don't want to pin all that onto Duran's shoulders right away, expecting him to be like one of your better relievers right out the gate, even though it could, there's not, he's a good enough pitcher to do it. But you wouldn't necessarily want to do that. However, still, Taylor Rogers, at the most is only going to throw 70 innings for you, really. And if you're looking at this, if you saw my preview basically of the season, my current view of this team is it's just not quite enough there. And it's more than likely, I think, that the front office will be sellers at the deadline. They have so many good assets to sell. If things don't go the way we want them to, I think this front office will be motivated to trade away guys at the deadline if the Twins aren't in first place, if they're maybe in the hunt but on the outside looking in. So Taylor Rogers might only be a Twin until July anyway, if you keep him and you don't fix this rotation. So I'm not saying that, this was the best way to potentially fix the rotation. No, no, there were better ways to go about this. But at this point, this close to opening day, options are going to be pretty limited, unfortunately. So I'm not saying I would be motivated to trade Taylor Rogers. No, not at all. But I think if his name comes up in conversation, I don't think you just totally shut things down. And I know a lot of Twins fans have sort of indicated that they don't think that is a fair trade at all. And I'm going to pull up baseball trade values just to sort of give you an indication on how they rate these two guys. And certainly, I'm not trying to say that this is irrefutable, that baseball trade values is, concrete how a MLB front office would view things. But I do think they invest a lot of time and thought and energy into this site, and it is pretty valuable. And I think in particular, it's really good for major leaguers. I think they miss a bit on prospects, on minor leaguers, sometimes on younger guys. I don't know that their values are particularly good there. I think they have algorithms that are kind of a little bit off. But on major leaguers, I think they do a good job. And I think this is a valuable tool to look at to kind of help you factor in contracts. I think that's really a big factor of anybody who's really concerned about the value of these two guys. It's that Rogers is only under contract for one more year, and Paddack has 3 years of team control. So I've saw a lot of Twins fans on Twitter say like, though they don't want anything to do with that straight up. The way, again, this is baseball trade values. It's a really fun site. The way they see it, Padres fans should be balking at this idea because Paddack is more than twice as valuable as Taylor Rogers because, again, he comes with 3 years of team control and is a starting pitcher, which are more valuable, than Taylor Rogers, who's a relief pitcher on 1 year. So that is kind of the breakdown there. So I'm going to leave that up for a sec while I start to kind of track on some of the comments in the live chat. Definitely feel free to talk amongst yourselves. That's a big part of this too, is just a bunch of Twins fans coming together live on here and talking, bouncing ideas around. Yeah, you Darvish throwing around. I think, that's another interesting name. I threw out Blake Snell was a name I threw out in a trade earlier this offseason. Those guys, again, since the Padres are trying to compete, it's probably less likely that those guys would be on the block or in a deal, but you never know. These conversations could go many different directions. Ben throws out, I'd like to see Rogers and Larnach for Paddack, Myers, and a prospect. Kind of in that same, let's throw that in here because I'm guessing that that's actually going to be, I don't know how much negative value they have on Will Myers. But again, like I mentioned kind of on the onset, Will Myers probably has negative trade value considering his contract. Yep, he is minus 12 point on here. So as you can see, the prospect, obviously you mentioned a prospect. So that would be, you'd be able to get a really nice prospect. And again, this site isn't the gospel. There are some problems with the valuations. And to be fair, it is incredibly difficult what they're trying to do. So I always want to give them, not be so harsh on them when I poke holes in some of their stuff. It's a really ambitious project to try to do this. But as you can see, a Rogers Larnach for Paddack Myers base trade, you have a lot because basically that's almost no value with how negative Will Myers' contract makes his trade value. It almost cancels out all of Chris Paddack's value. And again, this is just a great tool for like if you're trying to figure out how much someone's contract or team control factors into their trade value. Not really saying these are really concrete numbers, and a lot of trades that happen aren't don't end up making sense with the logic on this site. Like I think Sonny Gray's trade value was way, way, way higher than Chase Petty's on this site. So it's not like in order to get a real life trade to happen, it has to make sense on this site either. I want to make that clear as well. I just think it's helpful and it's pretty fun to look at. And most of the time, it makes the logic makes some sense. And Ansley said the emotional for the fan is going to beat out the analytical. Yeah, I mean, it would be tough. It would be tough, even though I get the logic of potentially trading Taylor Rogers. I definitely, I love Taylor Rogers. He's been a great pitcher here. It's been fun to watch him develop and come along. And he's a really important guy to the clubhouse. He's the team's union rep as elected by his fellow players. And he's been the union rep through all this craziness, through COVID, through the lockout. So he's been a really important guy to the Twins organization on and off the field, and just seems like a really great dude. So I would not be excited at all to see him go. I think it's really unfortunate that this is potentially the situation that basically the Twins are finding themselves in. Because how much easier does it look now to have just signed a free agent earlier? Instead of having to sort of do this. So, I'm very much looking at it as this is the situation we're in today. Everything else before this is water under the bridge. Because in the moment, as we're following these rumors, again, I'm going to refresh MLB trade rumors just to make sure there's not anything I'm missing. This is a focus, on what's going to happen. What does it make sense for the Twins? But my second day take, if a trade goes down, is going to be like, okay, what the hell happened that made it necessary for the Twins to trade Taylor Rogers to upgrade the rotation? Because that is going to be, the second sort of part of the analysis of this, and it's going to be frustrating if that ends up happening. As much as I think they have to get a rotation upgrade, and I'll understand it to a certain degree, I'll get it. This is exhausting. This off season, oh my gosh, this off season has been exhausting. It has been crazy. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun, but exhausting. Definitely, this off season has been wild. The rumors have been nuts, and that's something I'm kind of thinking now is like the Twins. Rumors that with this Twins front office don't usually linger. Either something gets done pretty quickly and we barely heard about it, or doesn't get done. And with opening day right around the corner, you'd think the clock's ticking. You'd think if the trade is going to go down, it would be coming together pretty quickly. Yeah, some other people mentioning that like Trevor Larnach would be a good fit. There's a lot of players that the Twins have that I think that would be nice fits for the Padres. I'm not really sure what they're after, and I'm not super in touch with their system as much, obviously, as the Twins. I know they have a lot of starting pitching and on their 40-man roster. And, there's a lot of teams looking for pitching. It wouldn't shock me, and I kind of tweeted this, suggesting this. It wouldn't shock me if at some point, if this doesn't get done soon, if it potentially turns into a three-way trade, because the Padres have multiple pieces that they might find attractive to other teams. Paddack is not an upgrade. I definitely disagree with that. He wouldn't be an upgrade to the degree like Frankie Montas would be. Certainly, that's apples to oranges. Paddack was great in 2019, but that was a couple years ago now. And it's kind of weird that that's the case because you'd think, a lot of guys with the juiced ball in 2019, you'd think like that would be the year he was bad, and then he's been better since then, but a complete opposite for him. Let's pull up. I've got his baseball reference page up here. So yeah, the last couple of years, ERA-wise, have been rough. But again, if you kind of break it down to his strikeout-to-walk ratio, things look pretty good. His whips are that's not bad at all, especially for an ERA that high. And then his FIP, fielder independent pitching, which really focuses on strikeouts, walks, and home runs, last season was 3.78, which is really, really good. Actually, let's pull up that. Let's go back to that. Fangraphs. Gosh, that's a really good FIP last year. And that's not the most predictive stat FIP, but that's kind of what it tries to be, is an ERA estimator. It's not amazing at that, but it has some value there. How many innings? 100 innings. So we'll set the minimum to 100. So what I'm trying to get up here is the leaders in FIP from last season, minimum 100 innings. He's got to be pretty good. And again, we have a sample of 129 pitchers we're looking at here. And Chris Paddack comes in 43rd in FIP. So in terms of FIP, right behind Luis Castillo, who's a guy that a lot of Twins fans were kind of lusting after. Not far off from Sean Manaea, which a lot of Twins fans were lusting after. Actually above Blake Snell. Above our old friend Kyle Gibson. I mean, do I have to say anymore? He's better than Kyle Gibson in turn. No, okay. I love Kyle Gibson. I know he's a sensitive subject still these days. So there's a lot of things, even if you don't really get super nerdy on the pitching side and like break down like, oh, his fastball didn't have enough ride or whatever, and get really granular. There are things just in the strikeout-to-walk ratio in the FIP that, kind of suggest that Paddack was much better than his ERA last year and has a lot more upside. Again, this is a 26-year-old guy who averaged around 95 miles per hour with his fastball. He's got good stuff. So I think Paddack is definitely an upgrade to finish that conversation. Got off on a shit there. I definitely think Paddack is an upgrade over Archer or Bundy. If you want to make it the argument that you think Ryan and Ober are better than him, I could hear that. Whereas, Frankie Montas would be the number one pitcher on the Twins. Whereas Paddack right now would kind of be a guy who is, helping you round out the rotation more than really elevate it like Montas would be. But Paddack, again, if you can figure out what that 2019 mojo was again, that chance is there. You don't want to pay for that, though, of course. You don't want to pay for that expect that to happen. But it's not out of the ordinary or not out of the question, excuse me, that could happen. And, kind of talking about the bullpen, Paddack was actually in a rumored deal, I think, to go to the Mets, within the last week or so. And one of their relievers, Emilio Pagan, was also rumored to be in that deal as well. And, he's a guy that you could sort of have the same, a lot of the same conversations with in terms of, well, his numbers don't look great, but he's been good in the past, and, there's reason to believe he could be better. So people are probably going to get tired of me making that same argument, but I'll just throw that out there that this was a guy who was nasty in 2019, absolutely gross, really one of the better relievers in baseball in 2019. 12.3 K per nine with a 1.7 walk per nine. As you can see, he's faded a bit since then, especially in his ERAs, but the whips still look good. He's walking a few more guys than you'd like, especially since he was very good at limiting that in the past. Striking guys out, home runs, a huge issue last year. 2.3 home runs per nine. He gave up 16 home runs in 63 and a third innings pitched. That is horrible. So that was his big issue in 2021. But he's a guy who has a couple in control, who could come over and be someone who would factor into the Twins bullpen. I'm not smart enough to know this stuff, but I've seen in this conversation this evening that multiple people suggest that San Diego does not have a good pitching, development, pitching analytics group, that they're just not getting the most out of their pitchers. So that could be another reason why, to believe these guys can be better than what, number one, they have been. That's encouraging. So it's not like you're expecting them to do something they've never done before. But number two, if San Diego has that reputation, and again, I'm not smart enough to know that. I'm echoing things I've seen from other analysts that I trust. And that'd be another maybe reason to believe in some extra positivity from these guys. I'll make sure. Yeah, nothing new on trade rumors. Of course, it'll be on Twitter first, but I'm not going to sit here. You want to watch me scroll Twitter, I don't think. We are going to have a shorter stream than usual because I do, we're in minor league mode, so I'm going to have to put together a minor league video of highlights for tonight. If you missed it, Royce Lewis was doing some great stuff again. Had a double in the first inning and stole third base. Very nice to see. Jose Miranda led off the game with a home run. So that game's still going on for the Saints. I'll be having some highlights on that before the evening is over. All right. And I see a lot of bouncing around. And I know there was some concern over, well, what do they do? Are they going to have a six-man rotation? I mean, that's an option, I suppose, especially since, I don't know how many innings they really want Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober to pitch, and we know Sonny Gray's a bit behind schedule. They could maybe at least start with a six-man rotation. But moving Chris Archer to the bullpen or having him like piggyback with somebody, where he's throwing 3 innings at a time, I like that idea a lot more than I like this 5-man rotation right now. Just to be honest, no offense to those guys. And you know what? It is. I don't want to make it sound like the Twins right now are the worst rotation in baseball. That's not the case. There are plenty, there are probably close to 10 teams that have worse rotations. But, if the Twins are trying, and certainly by all accounts that they appear to be trying to make a push, they should be upgrading this rotation and try to get it better than that. Andrew, doesn't matter who we sign or trade for, it's never good enough for most of you. LOL. I'm like that too a lot of the time, so I shouldn't be laughing. I'm the same way for a lot of the time, but you gotta laugh. And you know what? Not everybody's gonna agree on everything all the time. There's gonna be parts of the fan base where no matter how much of a kind of a positive spin you can get on the guys they acquire, they're just gonna be upset that Taylor Rogers is potentially getting traded, and that's okay. Again, he's been a really good player. Should be great this year. The Twins don't have a whole lot of bullpen support outside of him. So, we'll see. So, okay, now I remember what I was about to do. Again, continue to talk amongst yourselves in the chat. What I'm going to do, I might as well throw this together live, is let's work something with Paddack, Myers, and Pagan. Because I don't know Pagan's. I think he's under arbitration eligible, so I don't know a whole lot about what his trade value is going to look like. Probably not much is what it looks like. There was Paddack. Let's go by name. We'll just put together a hypothetical. Trade to the Twins. He actually has no trade value. Emilio Pagan. Again, relievers, especially non-elite closers, that doesn't surprise me. I think he, would be, I think the Twins, even regardless of what they do in this trade, I think he would be an interesting guy for the Twins to target, just because I think even with Rogers, they could use potentially some experienced major leaguers in the bullpen. So, wow. So yeah, if we do this, you can actually take off Trevor Larnach. And I understand a lot of Twins fans would rather trade Trevor Larnach than Taylor Rogers because he is, not a guy that is pegged in to be contributing to the Twins. But his trade value is definitely much higher. So yeah, this, would we do this deal? You could get trading Taylor Rogers for Wil Myers, Chris Paddack, and Emilio Pagan. So you're getting a guy who is going to fill in the rotation. You're getting a guy in the bullpen, and you're getting a position player. What is Wil Myers' salary? If I remember correctly, he was really good. And yeah, a lot of guys, it's so weird to try to figure out 2020. A lot of guys who were kind of slumping had really good years in 2020. And then kind of went back to not being so great in 2021. Although a 113 OPS plus for Wil Myers, it's not like, that's bad. But it's not somebody you're like really targeting. I think he split time between first base and outfield last year. Get a look here. All right. So yeah, I guess he didn't play any first base last year. He's got some first base in his past, but just played right field last year. And he is under contract for $22.5 million. Yeah, I think the Padres would have to send some money the Twins' way for that to work out. I don't think the Twins, I really don't see them as ever, this front office is ever taking on a bad contract in order to get a deal done. So the Padres would have to add some probably serious money, I would think, for the Twins to take on Wil Myers. I don't know, because I don't think they need Wil Myers. I think the only thing they're taking Wil Myers on for is because his trade value is negative. So it would be to lessen what they'd have to give up to get Paddack, which I don't know if I even want. Just pay what it takes to get Paddack. Again, if you're thinking of Larnach, I'm not saying that I don't think he would fit with San Diego, but they might be literally only interested in guys that are established major leaguers, not guys who are in AAA, who are major league ready, literally only looking for established major leaguers. And again, Wil Myers, corner outfielder, can play some first base. Do the Twins really need anything like that? He's a right-handed bat, so he could be a nice platoon guy in the outfield. They don't have a DH technically, but obviously with Gary Sanchez and Luis Ariz, they have extra guys that can fit in there nicely. I don't really think that the Twins are going to be motivated to get Wil Myers. Again, and I'm sure the San Diego is pushing them to take him. So when you hear his name involved in the trade talks, I think this is a good way to use this tool, is to show that no one's gonna want Wil Myers. San Diego is gonna be motivated to get rid of him. Yeah. All right. And Andrew says, I'm just tired. All right. Just gonna catch up on the chat here. And we're just gonna continue to kind of play around with this. Let's go back to the Padres. Excuse all the scrolling. Let's take Myers off. And look at the Twins. Like a really good example of why I say sight isn't the gospel is I think they have Caleb Thielbar as being slightly higher in value than Rogers. Now, Thielbar has a bunch more years of team control. I get that. But I would have a really hard time believing that if you were the Twins and you were in this conversation with the Padres and they asked for Taylor Rogers and you said, well, we don't want to trade Rogers, but how about Thielbar? That they'd be like, oh, okay, sure. I don't buy that. I don't. Nothing. And Caleb Thielbar has been really good. But I don't see that as the case. And I know he has 2 more years of team control, but I think so that's an example of where I think there are some holes. I mean, we can look at the next guy down to Yohan Duran. I think at this point, especially now that we know he's healthy, his value's got to be higher than that as well. But what I'm doing here is I'm looking because we have Paddack and Pagan and 17 points. So it's kind of hard to bridge that gap. And Rogers is there. And again, if we're kind of assuming they're not going to be interested in your Larnachs, I would certainly see if they were interested in Kepler. I'd be, again, you have Larnach. If they're not going to be interested in Larnach, you could potentially trade Kepler and just move Larnach into right field. So maybe there is a discussion to have. Miranda, again, we're talking about, probably San Diego wanting an actual established major leaguer. So yeah, it gets kind of, it felt like Oakland was such a good trade partner for the Twins because they would. These are exactly the kind of guys that Oakland loves, is guys who are in the high minors who are basically major league ready, but not having started their service time clock yet. This is Oakland. Bob, I love that. Multiple people have brought up Bob to me in the last couple days about Max Kepler. I love that. Bob M, who's a very frequent commenter on here. Love Bob. Bob's super passionate, and he drops in some good knowledge every once in a while. That guy does not like Max Kepler. That guy does not like Max Kepler. And it's funny to me that people are catching up on that and remembering him. He must be tied up today. Love Bob. All right. And, again, I keep thinking the longer this goes on, the longer I think that this deal is not going to happen. That's just gut feeling. That's not anything concrete. I also kind of feel like the longer this lingers, and if they can't quite bridge the gap, the potential a third team gets involved. And Frankie Montas is still available. So potentially maybe the Twins are like, hey, we're going to pull the trigger on this Chris Paddack deal if you guys won't talk to us about Montas more, and maybe trying to push that conversation a bit further. It was reported that Montas, he threw a simulated game on the side, not in an official spring game, like on the minor league backfields within the last couple of days, and the Twins had scouts in attendance for that. So I think that's kind of unusual. That probably that an opposing team would know that a guy's throwing a side session. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seemed interesting to me that was the case. All right, just catching up here. And I see there was some discussion about potentially extending Rogers. I agree with this. The Twins aren't going to spend money on relief pitchers. Taylor Rogers is going to make good money in his next deal. Happy for him. But this team is not going to spend money on the bullpen. And I think with the way that they operate, I think that makes a lot of sense. And they've done a pretty good job of piecing together bullpens. Now, obviously, when they've spent money, it's actually gone poorly. So, they haven't spent the top money, but, Addison Reed was a really good, steady reliever for a really long time. They signed him to a 2-year deal, and he was basically hurt the whole time. Alex Colomé, we all know what happened there. I don't need to get into details there. So it's like they're the worst outcomes that they've had in building bullpens is when they've actually spent money, which is funny. All right. Hey, nice. We got a viewer going to opening day. That got bumped back to Friday, as I'm sure probably most people watching know. If you had plans to go on Thursday and that's not going to work for you Friday, my heart goes out to you. But there's probably some people who had the opposite going on. They couldn't go Thursday, but they could go Friday. Either way, excited. All right. But yeah, it doesn't seem, you guys can let me know real quick in the chat. Again, there's a bit of a delay, but let me know if there's been any developments that have been gone on since kind of we started. Doesn't look like on trade rumors there is, and they're usually pretty on top of stuff there. Again, I didn't really want to scroll Twitter, but let's just make 100% sure here. All right. So yeah, we'll just kind of continue to keep an eye on the situation. Clearly, with opening day coming pretty soon, I can't. There's no reason they can't make a trade after opening day. But I'd imagine these teams want to get their deals done, want to get guys in house who are going to be there. Especially with pitchers. Get their catchers getting familiar with them. So this can't linger on for much longer. I think we're going to wrap up the stream here. Again, I'm going to roll right into working on a minor league video, and also going to talk about, since only the Saints are playing today and tomorrow, I'm going to talk about some guys on the AAA roster and AA roster to look out for tonight, and then the high A and low A roster. Jeez. Tomorrow, because the minor league team rosters came out. So we'll discuss those a little bit, so be on the lookout for that. But everybody, thanks for hanging out. Just going to read a couple more. Yeah, and Andrew is asking if there's a chance the A's are holding on to Montas because they'll get more value at the deadline. That's possible. You would think there would be more teams potentially interested in him in the off season. So more of a market, but definitely the teams that will be interested in him at the deadline will be desperate for him. But the guy has missed quite a bit of time over his career, so that's kind of a dangerous gamble for the A's to make. Yeah, Montas is head and shoulders above Paddack at this point, especially. Montas led the American League in Fangraphs WAR in the second half last year. Really came together for him, finished 6th in Cy Young. So that's the guy we want more than anything, but you can't make a team make a deal. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out. If you haven't liked the video, please like it and consider subscribing for some more Twins talk. We'll talk again soon. Streaming will be either on Wednesday or Thursday evening going forward, depending on when the Twins play. So if the Twins are playing a night game on Wednesday, we're going to push it back to Thursday. But come on, hang out every week. We got a bunch of Twins fans hanging out, chatting. So come on back next week.